to understand psychology completely different than you have before. If you spend a lot of time, like me, learning the academic part of psychology, I'm going to do my best to convince you that that's not all there is. Let's talk about the pendulum. We see this in many aspects of our lives: dating, in relationships, in working with coworkers, in money, how we deal with money. The first side, all the way on my screen's flipped around backwards. So the first one, I think, on your left would be C, the letter C, and this is collapse. And the one on the far right would be posturing. So if collapse on one end and then posturing on the other. And collapse is the way that we're just kind of falling into a situation. And collapsing we can do in every situation in our lives, just kind of collapsing into what's going on and not having the confidence, charisma, self-esteem, self-control, fill in the blank to do something. When I first started my business coming out of the military, I had been trading my time for money for 20 years, so to speak. So like that's the big entrepreneur quote. Like I got out of this to stop trading time for money. And I was about to charge someone $5,000 for a week of coaching, which is $100K for me now. But I'm worried about charging $5,000, and I've got this person on the phone. They don't know who I am. And I tell them it's 5,000, and all they did on the other end of the line was just make a noise. They just went, that's it. They didn't say anything. And I said, oh, well, I mean, I could definitely, I could do, we can work together in the future. I'll give you half off, I'll give you 2,500 for this entire week of my life. And, we can work it out. And you know what? And I wound up just kind of I was negotiating with myself downward, almost to the point where I was like, you know what? I'll give you money. I'll write you a check, and then I'll come down and we'll do some training. And that took some time to get over. And on the other hand, I know people who are coaches who are posturers with money, where they say, oh, I'm like $6 billion to come spend 15 minutes with you. And that's the posturing part of it. We can posture in our relationships. We can posture at work. We're overcompensating. And we can see a person posturing with their posture, with the tone of their voice. So we have collapse on the left, posturing on the right. And right there in the center, we have composure. And this is the key element. There's no way that all of you are going to do this, but I know at least one will. And if you do what I'm about to say, please shoot me an email because I want to hear back from you. Or shoot me a text. Composure means that we're kind of on that razor's edge of being in the moment and totally okay with everything. The reason we have people in, those massage chairs you see like in the airport or in the mall, like where you kind of get on your knees on this little weird looking thing and the person will just kind of rub your shoulders. We have shoulder tension because our shoulders used to have to come up to protect our neck from saber-toothed tigers and lions. So if you ever watch a compilation on YouTube of people getting the crap scared out of them, they all do the same thing. All humans do the same thing. The fear facial expression starts right here. This is a meataloclastoid muscle. This little muscle jumps out in front of the carotid artery to protect the artery. The shoulders come up. This part of the arm here, the humerus, comes in to protect the brachial artery. So fear makes our body protect arteries. So what the hell does this have to do with composure? What I'd like you to do is to try to imagine the next time that you feel any kind of tension in your body, any kind of this reservation. So we're kind of moving. You'll notice that posturing and collapse both are tense. They're both tensed up. The next time you feel it, I want you to be grateful and express a thank you to that animal part of your brain for trying to protect you. But I also want you to remember there's no frickin' tigers. There aren't any tigers here. I'm going to live. I'm going to be okay. If I completely let go right now in this moment, I'm going to be just fine. There are no tigers. So just try to remember that that's the first element of composure, is to get your body involved, because the body does lead the mind. One of the rules I have in influence, in interrogation or sales or whatever, is never ask a person to make a decision while their back is touching a chair. This is because we make big decisions to do things while we're leaning forward. We lean forward when we think about doing something we're excited about, that we want to do. So I want their body to be sold first, and then I'm going to sell their psychology. So I want you to do the same to yourself. Make your body sell everything first. So when we're talking about composure, we're just meaning that we are composed throughout the day. And I think I especially see this in men, not so much in women. Although I did coach a yoga instructor a few weeks ago who did this. But men obsess over status and hierarchy. Where am I in this pecking order? Where am I in this food chain? That's, if you go into a room full of strangers, that's the first thing that we think about. Most men. And relieving yourself of that thought completely changes a whole lot of stuff. And here's the thing that I was going to recommend. If you watch a whole season of Andy Griffith, I think that is the most groundbreaking training in composure that I think a human being can get. If I had written a book about composure and the behavior of composure, it wouldn't do any justice compared to just absorbing that behavior. You know how we're the average of the people that we spend time with. There's a quote from Jim Rohn: "You're the cumulative average of the 5 people you spend time with." I think that matters in media too. That matters with the news agencies that you choose to watch. It matters with what we're spending time with on social media, the people that we're spending time with, so to speak. Like if you're watching a YouTube channel of somebody who's really uplifting, you're spending time with that person. So I think that's the fastest way to absorb behavior, is by spending time with people. And I think it's a blessing that we can spend time with role models on camera. And I had a commander who taught me this in the Middle East. And every time someone screwed up, which I did quite a bit, I was a chief, had 149 sailors working for me. And when one of them did something stupid that I had no part in, of course, I would get hauled into the office. So anytime somebody would screw up, they'd pick a random episode of Andy Griffith. He had the box set, and you take the little DVD down to his personal little break room. You watch that episode and you write a 2-page report on a leadership lesson you learned from that episode and how it applies to how you screwed up. And the funny thing is, it always works. No matter what episode you choose, there's a lesson in there about how you screwed up. And I never got the value of the show until that commander. And he is a 3-star admiral now, and he's about to be the chief of naval operations. His name is Brad Cooper, if you want to look him up. Okay. So this is the pendulum. If I'm spent the day in collapse, if I spent any part of my time in posturing, that's what I'm just going to write. I might do an arrow. I'm going to do a little right arrow or a left arrow. I might do a P or a C, O, however you want to do it. But please start documenting this stuff. Do it tonight. Make tonight your first night. I'm going to document this so I can start getting a grip, because this awareness is the steering wheel for your behavior. So we know this awareness and journaling, or just you don't have to journal, put it in an Excel spreadsheet or whatever. But that is the steering wheel. So composure and confidence together, when we add in congruence, I'll make it bigger for y'all. I'll make myself tinier. When we add in congruence, that's when we have the cult leader possibilities. And I mean that in a good way. That's when we have the unlimited influence possibilities. If you watch the composure of the people who get to rise to the top, the people like Bill Clinton has an unlimited amount of composure, regardless of your political leanings. Ronald Reagan had that sense of unlimited composure. So one thing that's big is this ability to plan ahead and not really talk about it. So planning ahead just means that we talked about this in several of my courses, but all I'm saying is I'm planning ahead with all of my actions. But what that would mean for me if I'm walking into a meeting, I want to be able to look back and say that I had a good meeting. I don't want to plan ahead and say I'm going to look back later tonight and regret going in here and not being in full composure. So a lot of people plan ahead for actions, but they don't plan ahead for feelings. And they don't plan ahead for behavior. The number one thing that makes the biggest difference in our life, we don't plan for. We plan ahead for finances and taxes and all kinds of other crap, but we don't plan behavior, especially our own. We might plan someone else's. I'm going to change that guy into doing that. I'm going to convince that person to do this. We don't plan our own. Okay. Whatever you are not aware of can literally ruin your life. And that's the overall message here. When it comes down to authority, and we're going to really dissect what authority is and how it hacks the human brain. But this awareness is the number one yellow brick road to having this completely come into your life. So you don't have to be stoic. You don't have to go meditate in the bushes or do any of that stuff. But we do need to understand that how would I look and how would I feel if I knew everything was going to be okay? What would my behavior look like if I thought everything was going to be just fine all the time? So just our daily interactions, we can start practicing this. This is the Amazon guy dropping off a box at your house to checking out at Best Buy when you buy that big TV because your neighbor got a bigger one. We can always enact this. We can always make this a practice. So the good thing about most of this stuff is it's not you need to take some time out of your day other than just about 30 seconds. All of these tips, all of these techniques you can use in every interaction you're already having, including Zoom. So this is pretty big, that wherever you're a no to other people, you're a no to that in yourself as well. And so this is typically when I say I'm kind of ashamed about something in me, that's kind of what I'm make fun of in other people. That's what I'm judgmental about in other people. It's a famous case in psychology where a college professor handed everybody a note card in the class. And he said, I want you guys to take these note cards and I want you to write down 5 things you don't like about a person that you know. So these people took the cards and said they're jealous, they're controlling, they're envious, they're really disorganized, whatever, fill in the blank. They have no self-control. And then at the end of class, he revealed that at least 3 out of these 5 things that you wrote down are things that you secretly don't like or want to change about yourself. So when we're a no to ourselves, we're a no to others. Wherever we're a no to others, we're the same for ourselves. So I think Carl Jung called this the shadow. And this is the part of ourselves that we don't really want on public display. And since we want to distance ourselves from this behavior so much, I'm going to talk about how negative it is in other people, hoping that it'll change me. And that's where a lot of judgment comes from. If I make fun of enough people, if I judge enough people for having XYZ behavior trait, maybe that'll eventually make it go away in my own psychology. I really regret flipping this video backwards. But that's what we mean with composure. So when we talk about a lot of this stuff, the moment that we're able to say the phrase, I'm secretly ashamed of blank, then we've started to grab control of it. The moment we ignore it, keep it in the dark, we know that it's forever going to be there. So we begin to bring the shame and we pull it out into the light. So anything we pull into the light will die. And this happens everywhere in persuasion. When I'm teaching attorneys how to conduct a deposition, not that I know anything about the law, but I do know stuff about humans. And I'm teaching these attorneys to conduct a deposition, and what their opposing counsel goes up and does, let's just call these techniques 1, 2, and 3. So the opposing counsel goes up and uses technique 1, 2, and 3. Then the guy that I coached, or the woman in the last case, goes up there and says, I noticed that the opposing counsel used techniques number 1, number 2, and number 3. Those are designed to make you feel this, this, and this. And that's what I'm saying to the jury. So anything that we're bringing into awareness automatically loses power, which is good. It's a good thing. So the moment that I call out a technique, and even if I'm complimenting you on using it, the power of the technique is gone. So like if you're using a 3-part selling technique on me and I say, I noticed that you did this, this, and this, I bet that's really effective and you had a really great delivery. Your confidence in your sales techniques disappears because they've been brought into the light. So I'm going to do one more story. I think this is the final story for the day. But I had a mentor when I was in my early 20s. He was a 74-year-old at the time. And he was a pretty smart dude. And I scuba dived a whole lot, scuba dove, not sure what it is. But I lived in Hawaii. I was stationed in Pearl Harbor for 13 years and did a lot of scuba diving. And there's a lot of eels out there in Hawaii. And I never knew this, but I knew that when I got close to an eel, their heads were kind of moving out of these little holes in the rocks. I didn't know back then that that's how they breathe. So eels have to move forward to force water through their gills. So it looks like they're opening their mouth and lunging forward, but that's just breathing. And we used to go down underwater, and I'll tell you the biggest scuba diving secret in the world. We would take Cheese Whiz underwater. Cheese Whiz is magic. If you're ever spearfishing, fish are addicted to it, and you can dispense it in as much as you want, and it makes a little snake in the water, and it's neutrally buoyant. Cheese Whiz. So we'd take Cheese Whiz down there and do a little, some spearfishing. So I'm in a place called Hanauma Bay on Oahu, and I put my hand right down on a rock and an eel grabs my arm. If you've never seen eel teeth, please Google them later. It's the freakiest looking stuff you've ever seen. So it was a big wound. So I got stitches and all this other stuff. I'm telling my mentor about it. And then a week later, I'm complaining to my mentor about an asshole at work. And I'm really upset about this guy. I don't know what to do about him. And the mentor says, well, did he bite you? And I said, no, no. What do you? And he said, well, the eel bit you and you weren't mad at the eel. And I said, well, it's just a creature doing what it's trained to do based on its upbringing and its ancestors. And he said, it's the same thing with the guy at work. And that was the biggest revelation I've ever had in my life. It's a creature doing what it does based on its programming. So this is when he taught me about these three little ways to see the world, because most of us spend our life seeing everything in first person, even if we're talking to another person, seeing it in first person from my POV. To see it in second person would be, I can see from the other person's point of view. People who are highly self-conscious tend to view the world in second person because they're looking at themselves, wondering what they look like, wondering how they sound. That was me the first like 10 YouTube videos I ever did. It's all second person. I'm all worried about me. I'm trying to sound cool on the microphone. I'm trying to look cool on camera, and it comes out cringy. But third person is when I can see the dynamic of both of us existing. And the only way to really get into third person is to understand the eel concept, like that's a creature doing programming, and to remove the judgment. And I can tell you there's no faster way to remove judgment than interrogating someone who has been charged with or suspected of a sexual crime with a minor, and having to say phrases like, she's 13. She's old enough. She knew exactly what she was doing when she picked out that skirt. That is the hardest thing to do, to get somebody to confess to a crime, and not judging them in the moment or pretending not to was really difficult. But the moment that we start judgment, we automatically go back into first person. Judgment mandates first person. So we can't really live in second person if we're judging the person we're sitting inside of. So third person allows you to exert more confidence in situations. It allows you to exert more authority and to have more authority while you're speaking. So we started out with this. We talked a little bit about confidence, then composure, and then this seeing everything in third person and not worrying very much about yourself. And I want you just to understand this one concept. It may make sense immediately. If it doesn't today or tomorrow, you're going to be like in the shower one day and be like, oh my God, I get it. But everything that we're talking about and your ability to speak with authority and act with confidence, be in third person, stay in composure, comes down to your feeling of safety. Everything is about safety. The feeling of confidence is a feeling of safety. So what I mean by this is that I have a general, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I have a generalized expectation that good things are going to happen to me in the future. I basically know everything's going to be all right. I don't know if I'm going to win the lottery next week. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying everything's going to be just fine. There's no tigers. There's no sharks. I'm not going to get kicked out of the village and never have sex again. All of that stuff was helpful to my ancestors. I realized the reason they gave it to me, but I don't need it right now. So I can relax my shoulders. There's nothing going on. And confidence, authority, and third person thinking boils down to safety. So this is probably too small to read. This will be in your handouts, and I'm going to email this to you guys as well. But I highly recommend that you read this. And I think it's the best description of authority and composure that I've ever written or I've ever read. It was written by Marcus Aurelius as he's describing one of his military generals, Maximus. And he describes this person's behavior. This will be in the PDF that you see. But in it, he says he draws a lot of comparisons. So he draws comparisons like he was never in a rush to complete anything, but he was also never slow to complete a task. So everything that Marcus Aurelius is writing, and he wrote this in a book called The Emperor's Handbook, but this is kind of his journal. No, this is actually in Meditations of Marcus Aurelius. That's the name of the book. And everything he puts in here, he draws a contrast. But if you look at it differently, he is building these pendulums. He's building a pendulum of like being rushed to complete a task and then too slow. And right there in the middle is where composure is. That's where authority is, and confidence stays there in the middle. So let's go into confidence really quick. If you view, I did not want to get this on camera, but it's the only bottle I have. It's a bottle of ginger ale right here. It's about half full. It's about up to here. So your confidence level is just like the liquid inside of this. If your confidence is to the top, there's no room for posturing. There's no room for any ego, that some people might call it ego. But if your confidence isn't at the top, then ego automatically takes the place of the empty space. So the lower confidence is, the bigger ego becomes. And I want you to remember that ego does not mean a person is acting in an egotistic way. People with severe social anxiety also have a gigantic ego. If you think about the name of that word, the ego is this obsession with identity, how I'm being perceived, how people are looking at me. I'm very fragile to feedback. So we have like extreme people who are fake alpha male, fake alpha female, like Elizabeth Holmes, the CEO of Thanos, the scam artist, blood checker thing. So I want you just to think about this, like the safer we feel, the fuller this bottle becomes. So we make the ego smaller by feeling safe. So I want to talk really briefly about not briefly. We're going to talk at length about the Milgram experiment. The Milgram experiment was done in 1962 at a red brick building at Yale University called Lindsay Chatham Hall. And this quote here, I observed a mature and initially poised businessman enter the laboratory smiling and confident. And within just a few minutes, this guy's turned into a sniveling wreck. He's crying and he's begging to make the experiment stop. And this is a quote from Dr. Stanley Milgram about this experiment that made people commit murder in less than an hour. And they didn't use any techniques. There were no sales techniques, no hypnosis techniques. So if I am a psychotherapist and I'm treating somebody with depression and I need to get them to make a radical decision to change their life, would it be better to use something that could make somebody kill people in less than an hour, or use something that psychotherapy has proven to take 11 years to work? We tend to choose the 11-year rule all across the world. So I think that this has tremendous benefit for us to understand how this experiment hacked the brain. And I know that people are going to say, oh, yeah, well, it's authority. How helpful is that? Like the findings of the experiment said, well, people are obedient to authority. What's authority? How does it actually hack the brain? How does it work? How is it communicated? What are the tripwires that make a subconscious brain say, I'm going to follow that, and I'm going to do exactly what that person says? I spent 19 years probably putting this together and trying to dissect what was going on here. And they missed something. Every experimenter, every researcher, every doctor who's done an analysis of this experiment has missed something that you all have learned today. And I'm not going to say what it is that you've learned today, but I want you to look for it. So authority, yeah, we got it. Yes, there's authority. There's a dude in a lab coat. I'm about to show you a video of it. We got the authority part. But I want you to pay attention to what we're about to look at here and just try to see, what did we talk about just a bit ago that's secretly heavily involved in this scenario?
In a unique period from the early 60s to the early 70s, a group of social scientists conducted a series of experiments examining the nature of human behavior and its relationship to social conventions and situations.
In this setting, I allow things to be done to me that I wouldn't allow in any other context. The dentist is about to put an electric drill into my mouth. In this setting, I willingly expose my throat to a man with a razor blade.
Stanley Milgram, one of the most influential social psychologists of the time, was particularly fascinated with the dangers of group behavior and blind obedience to authority.
What is there in human nature that allows an individual to act without any restraints whatsoever, so that he can act inhumanely, harshly, severely, and in no way limited by feelings of compassion or conscience? These are questions.
But he might be dead in there. The experiment requires that you continue teaching. 330 volts.
The experiments that Milgram and others conducted were controversial, and for ethical reasons may never be conducted again. Yet the results of those experiments remain groundbreaking, profoundly revealing about the tensions between the individual and society, and increasingly relevant to contemporary life. In 1962, Stanley Milgram shocked the world with his study on obedience. To test his theories, he invented an event that would become a window into human cruelty. In ascending order, a row of buttons marked the amount of voltage one person would inflict upon another. Milgram's original motive for the experiment was to understand the unthinkable: how the German people could permit the extermination of the Jews.
When I learn of incidents such as the massacre of millions of men, women, and children perpetrated by the Nazis in World War II, how is it possible, I ask myself, that ordinary people, who are courteous and decent in everyday life, can act callously, inhumanely, without any limitations of conscience? Now, there are some studies in my discipline, social psychology, that seem to provide a clue to this question. The problem I wanted to study was a little different. It went a little bit further. It was the issue of authority. Under what conditions would a person obey authority who commanded actions that went against conscience? These are exactly the questions that I wanted to investigate at Yale University. It is May 1962. An experiment is being conducted in the Elegant Interaction Laboratory at Yale University. The subjects are 40 males between the ages of 20 and 50 residing in the greater New Haven area.
Psychologists have developed several theories to explain how people learn. One theory is that people learn things correctly whenever they get punished for making a mistake.
40 years later, Milgram's infamous experiment, obedience, is still taught in classrooms around the world.
Would you open those and tell me which of you is which, please? Teacher. Learn. All right, now the next thing we'll have to do is set the learner up so that he can get some sort of punishment.
What inspired Milgram, I would say there were a number of factors. One of them is he was very ambitious. He wanted to make a mark in social psychology. And he wanted, as he wrote to one friend, he wanted to come up with the boldest experiment that he could think of.
Would you roll up your right sleeve, please? This electrode is connected to the shock generator in the next room. And this electrode paste is to provide a good contact to avoid any blister or burn. Do you have any questions now before we go into the next room?
About 2 years ago, I was at the Veterans Hospital in West Haven. And while there, they detected a heart condition. There's nothing serious, but as long as I'm having these shocks, how strong are they? How dangerous are they?
Well, no, although they may be painful, they're not dangerous. Anything else?
No, that's all.
All right, teacher, would you take the test and be seated in front of the shock generator, please, in the next room?
But the experiment was rigged.
The victim was an accomplice of the experiment. The victim, according to plan, provided many wrong answers. His verbal responses were standardized on tape, and each protest was coordinated to a particular voltage level on the shock generator. Now, as teacher, you are seated in front of this impressive-looking instrument, the shock generator. Its essential feature is a line of switches that goes from 15 volts to 450 volts, and a set of verbal designations that goes from slight shock to moderate shock, strong shock, very strong shock, intense shock, extreme intensity shock, and finally XXX, danger severe shock. Your job, the experimenter explains to you, is a word pair test. If he gets each answer correctly, fine, you move on to the next pair. But if he makes a mistake, you are instructed to give him an electric shock, starting with 15 volts. And you increase the shock one step on each error.
Incorrect. You'll now get a shock of 105. Hard hit. Just how far can you go in this thing? As far as is necessary. What do you mean, as far as is necessary?
Milgram was very much aware that obedience is a necessary ingredient for society to function. But he focused on the darker side of obedience.
Incorrect. 150 volts. Sad face.
Wait a minute. That's all. Get me out of here. I told you I had heart trouble. My heart's starting to bother me now.
It's absolutely essential that you continue. You got no other choice, teacher.
Oh, I have a lot of choices. My number one choice is that I wouldn't go on if I thought he was being harmed.
Now, this man makes disobedience seem a very rational and simple deed. Now, other subjects respond quite differently to the experimenter's authority.
Wrong. It's hair. 75 volts, Jim. You don't know.
Please continue.
Some psychologists were troubled by the ethics of it. Many, if not most subjects, found it a highly stressful, conflicted experience. People are stammering, stuttering, laughing hysterically and inappropriately.
150 volts.
Experimenter. That's all. Get me out of here. I told you I had heart trouble. My heart's starting to bother me now. Get me out of here, please. Let me out of here. You have no right to keep me here. Let me out. Let me out of here. Let me out.
Continue, please.
Let me out of here. My heart's bothering me. Let
Go
me
on.
out. Let me out.
Clearly, when we say people went to the top of the shock board, it wasn't like they were going blithely, sadistically. People went stop and go, stop and go. They were in a state of conflict, which created a tremendous amount of stress. So that was the main critique.
This will be at 3:30.
As his voice began to show increasing frustration, so did I. And I was really in a state of real conflict and agitation. One of Stanley Milgram's basic contributions was that you don't ask people what they would do given this hypothetical situation. You put them in the situation.
Wrong. I want the 180 volts.
Please continue, teacher.
180 volts.
I can't stand the pain. Let me out of here.
Can't stand it. I'm not going to kill that man there.
According to Milgram, one of the things that's a prerequisite for carrying out acts that are evil is to shed responsibility from your shoulders and hand it over to the person in charge.
I mean, who's going to take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman?
I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please.
All right, next one, slow.
He didn't hold any gun to anybody's head. Just the fact that he conveyed a sense of authority. Roughly 60-65% of the people went all the way to the top of the shock board.
450 volts. That's it.
Now continue using the last switch on the board, please. The 450 switch for each wrong answer. Continue, please.
I'm not getting no answer. Don't the man's health mean anything?
Whether the learner likes it or not, we
But
must...
he might be dead in there.
Milgram made the point, I think very effectively, that the Nazis weren't all a bunch of psychopaths at Belsen and Dachau. A death camp from the middle class in New Haven.
Well, who was actually pushing the switch?
I was. But he kept insisting. I told him no, but he said he's got to keep going.
What kind of obedience would Milgram get today if he were to do the experiment today?
Probably about the same.
Probably about the same. Why?
I don't know. I think people are just inherently obedient.
It just really shows like how far human beings will go to appease what they perceive to be an authority figure.
Milgram has identified one of the constants, one of the universals of social behavior. The readiness to obey authority cuts across time. It's a constant. The other outstanding and distinctive thing about the obedience experiment is how much it has and keeps on permeating contemporary culture and thought. It's still with us in very, very important ways.
I know what you're thinking. You wouldn't do it. Not me. And we all would. I think we all would think, I would never do something like that. It's horrific. And we may be right. But I'd like you to look at the numbers. Or think about the numbers for a second. Around 67% of people went all the way to the end. All the way. What do you think the percentage was of people who did it enough to kill the other person? Let's say 250 volts. 250 is enough to kill you based on amperage. It was 100. 100% of people went to 250. And this experiment's been replicated many times. At first, before this thing started, the group of psychiatrists who are planning this thing out legally, probably, predicted that 0.01% would go all the way. They would have to be a psychopath. They'd have to be sadistic. They would have to enjoy hurting people in order to go all the way, which is the same thing we thought about the stuff that went on with the Nazis. And this has been replicated many times. So they said, well, the result is they were in a laboratory environment. They felt safe. That, there's an inherent belief that there's some safety there. I'm not going to kill somebody. So they replicated it in the basement of an apartment building. They replicated it in bad neighborhoods and good neighborhoods with people with an IQ from room temperature all the way up to boiling. And in the end, the results are the same. Men and women, black, white, Latino, doesn't matter. We were all obedient to authority as humans. And so now at this point that it's been replicated so many times, we're not looking at other people. We're looking basically at ourselves in these people. So this authority that happens that makes us obedient. So there's a lot going on in this scene. But I want you just to understand from the perspective of one of the volunteers. There's an ad in the newspaper. It says, get paid. We're going to feed you lunch. We're going to give you $20. We'll give you a little gas money just to come do this thing. And you're not a Yale student. So you're on Yale campus for the first time, or you're in the psychology department, at least for the first time. You're in this red brick building for the first time. You're meeting this doctor for the first time and the other volunteer for the first time. And you're in an experiment situation for the first time. You're seeing the shock machine for the first time. What do all those things have in common? Novelty. So authority and novelty made that happen, and they missed novelty. Novelty gets the focus, which they had from the beginning. Before the guy in the lab coat spoke a single word, novelty was already at play. The brain did not have a script, so it had to put all focus here to see what's going on. The moment there's no script, our brain says, this is new, this is different, I need to pay attention. That's when we drive on autopilot. We're driving our car, and we can kind of zone out. Even if we're doing 65 miles an hour, we can kind of zone out a little bit because we've done it so much. Our brain learns these patterns. But the sound of a horn, police lights in the rearview mirror, big flash of brake lights in front of us, all those things deviate from what our brain is used to and breaks the script and causes immediate focus. So the moment we're inside a script and it's broken, we have that tremendous amount of focus. So the way that we break scripts is by looking at a human being and possessing the ability to say, this situation is probably like some scenario in that person's past. The moment I can predict or even have an educated guess on what this situation is like to this person, I know the script. In some situations, I want the person to be pushed down into that script a little bit more. Like if in the school example at the seminar, I want them to be in that script because it automatically has the authority, the obedience, the openness, and the connection baked into that script because I'm borrowing from childhood in that person's brain. Alternatively, if I'm a salesperson and I'm calling on a company and I'm using techniques that make the person feel like I've heard this before on a sales call, I've brought up a script, but it's a bad one. So if I'm on a phone with somebody and I say, well, if I understand correctly, 1, 2, and 3 are very important to you. So if 1, 2, and 3 are actually met, would this be something that you're willing to move forward with today? That sounds like a sales script. And every time we've heard something like that, we've had something called buyer's remorse. So we're literally setting the person up for buyer's remorse. We're setting them up to expect it. But not only that, we're setting them up to be resistant. From the very beginning, the very first words that person is exposed to, we are triggering a script. If I'm a salesperson, if I'm get hired to go train a sales team, the first thing I teach is give me your script. We're going to rip it in half because it's probably like Xerox. It's probably like every other company who's doing these cold call sales techniques. And the moment someone hears it that reminds them of another sales call, you're finished. And he's like, well, our close rate's like 25%. And I said, well, that's why. It could be a lot higher. So the moment that we hear something, it might be a sales call, but we hear something that we've never heard before, instantly our brain says, this is not the same as those other things. So that's how we do that. And that's how we live most of our lives. Our brain is a shortcut machine. It says, this reminds me of that. I'm going to start doing what I'm used to doing with that, which is in the sales situation, becoming resistant, becoming a little bit arrogant, trying to get off the phone quickly, even if it's something I need, even if it's something like somebody's calling me for something, I need it. It's triggered the script already where I need to get off the phone. I'm going to make up an excuse. I'm going to go outside and ring my own doorbell so my dogs start barking and I can say, oh, sorry, I've got to go. We're going to figure out ways to get off the phone. I've done that in the last few days, by the way. So we're going to figure stuff out that says, I need to get out of here because it's just like X. So if I'm planning, let's go to the trial example. If I'm planning with a group of attorneys to talk to a jury, I'm going to dress the defendant like one of those people's friends. And I'm going to dress them in a way that is not businessy. I don't want them to interact with my client like a coworker. I want them to interact with my client like a friend. That's the number one mistake I see attorneys make when they prep their what's called the deponent, prep the person for a deposition. So I'm triggering a friend script, not a, hey, that looks like Nancy's blouse from accounting. So the fake pearl necklace from TJ Maxx, the blouse that she picked up on clearance that looks like a business suit, that's triggering a script. So if we operate on the premise that we're always going to be triggering a script, even if we do it on accident, let's start moving it to the realm where we're triggering scripts on purpose. We're making it part of our life because we're doing it anyway. We're already doing it. So if I'm talking to this attorney, how can I this is part of our planning session based on the behavior of the jury. What could my attorney do in front of a jury or in front of a judge that would trigger a script that would make that person borrow from a time that they fell in love, borrow from a time that they became enraged, depending on what outcome I need from that line of questioning. So I can do things and I can tell the attorney to use certain phrases. I can tell the deponent to use certain phrases. Hypothetically, I might have worked in a case where a judge just had a brand new grandbaby named Christian, and I needed to piss off the judge. I'm sorry, this was the opposing counsel, the opposing attorney, just had a new grandbaby named Christian. And my witness got up on the stand and kept saying this stupid idiot Christian, talking about a friend of hers, just to start triggering that script from the very beginning and start boiling that person's blood to make them look like they had low self-control to the jury. We're lowering their sense of self-control. So these small things can trigger all kinds of stuff in us. And let's make a decision today as a group, everyone here, that we're going to start doing this on purpose. I'm going to start seeing scripts, not just trying to trigger them. I'm going to try to predict them. I'm going to say, oh, that's the Starbucks barista. They're running the work script. So what's going to happen if I say, oh, looks like it's going to rain this afternoon. I wish it was sunny outside. How many times do they hear that every day? So that phrase would push them down into the work script. If I walked up to the counter and said, oh my God, you just missed the biggest fist fight out in the parking lot. That's something a friend would say, and it's something they don't hear from customers. This is new. This is different. I need to pay attention. So if I'm trying to get someone into a state of rapid compliance, I'm using confusion and all the other stuff we teach in the persuasion courses. I'm trying to get all that. I want them in a script. I want them to be paying the least amount of attention possible. So I can lower focus by removing novelty. I look like every other customer. I'm not really making eye contact. I say, oh, hey, how you doing? Oh, yeah, beautiful day. Do I tap this card? Do I do an India, put it in? Just the same crap they hear all the time, every day. So the more I'm pushing someone into a script, the less focus I'm creating. So in the Milgram experiment, when the guy said they're going to go piece by piece, they're coming in and out, they're becoming resistant and then non-resistant, but they did it within an hour. What are we really seeing when we're starting to see that resistance, and why? What is it that makes that really powerful? In reality, we're seeing authority and we're seeing the novelty there. But what we're really seeing is a person that has two scripts running at the same time. Don't hurt other people, which is a life script. We learn that as we're growing up. Believe it or not, we're not born knowing not to kill. And we're also seeing an evolution script. And the cool thing about this is, or the interesting thing I'll say, is that as you're watching this video and as you're seeing these people start resisting and then going back, resisting and going back, 90% of the time, when a life script comes up against a genetic script, something that our ancestors gave us, the genetic script will win. It's been keeping us alive longer than the life script. So the ancestor script wins because it has a longer evolutionary history. So I know that if I'm to influence a person, if I'm to influence anybody, I'm much more effective at persuasion if I'm targeting focus, authority, tribe, and emotion. If you think about it, authority comes before tribe. And authority comes before tribe because tribe to that person is the guy in the other room being shocked. But authority was more important. And their emotions about, I don't want to do this. This feels really bad. I shouldn't be doing this. I feel bad about myself, is after even tribe. So the authority is more important. So we as humans are persuaded by every single stimulus around us. And I'm going to crop this box really quickly. So all the stimulus around us has some degree of influence. And this is proven in subliminal advertising. And I don't mean when they flash the picture of the Coke on the movie screen or the popcorn or the dancing hot dog. What I mean by this is called PWA. And this stands for perception without awareness. So we're influenced and manipulated from authority standpoint and from just absorbing things in our environment all the time. So in the video that you're about to see now, there's a different type of authority. So as you watch this, I'd like you to ask yourself another question similar to the one we did with the Milgram video. What is being triggered on the fate model in this video? What is it in this video that's making people become compliant and making them stop their entire train of thought, stop all of their logic, everything that they know to be true, and what makes them start following? So with this, what I'd like to do is just illustrate how powerful some of this stuff is.
One of the most powerful parables in the Bible is that of the Good Samaritan. A man is passing by, seeing a stranger lying on the road, and the Bible is on the road from Jerusalem to Jericho, that many, many people have passed by and done nothing to help this suffering person. But the man from Samaria, the Good Samaritan, gets down off his camel, helps the man, brings him to an inn, gives the innkeeper money, checks on him to see that he's surviving and doing well. The idea is you should treat everyone as you would want them to treat you. It's the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It promotes the notion of social community, a sense in which a reciprocity. We all should help one another if we ever want others to help us. But that Good Samaritan rule often gets challenged because in many situations, people who are in need don't get the support they need. People pass them by, and that's called the bystander effect, the bystander indifference. So again, while you're watching this film clip, keep thinking, would I help? Would I intervene? What are the forces in that situation that would make me help? Or what keeps me, like most people, from helping, from being passive, in some cases from being indifferent to the suffering of my fellows?
Watch a pickpocket in action. The woman with the rucksack is his victim, and the man in the grey top on the left is the thief. Except they're both acting. In fact, everyone in the queue is with us, apart from the man in the blue shirt. As the thief moves in, will our bystander notice? He clearly has. What's more, he's seen that other people in the queue have noticed too. Now, what's he going to do about it? The answer is nothing. After all, no one else in the queue reacts, so why should he? Chances are, you wouldn't have done anything either. Whatever the man in the blue shirt thinks he's seen, he's influenced by the apathy of everyone else in the queue. In more serious situations, this could have disturbing consequences. Liverpool Street Station in London. A drunk lies on the pavement. In fact, he's our actor, Peter, but these passers-by aren't to know that. And since he looks the worse for wear, not critically ill, they ignore him. Helping would be inconvenient or even risky. He lies there for 20 minutes and no one raises an eyebrow. This time, we've dressed Peter as a respectable city gent. How long before he's rescued now that he looks the part?
Hello, sir. How are you today?
I'm all right, thanks.
6 seconds. She even calls him sir. And suddenly, everyone's a good Samaritan.
Do you suffer from epilepsy?
No.
Why you're lying on the floor in the rain?
After a couple of minutes, even the police turn up.
I
would just hate to be in his position of feeling ill and nobody helping and walking past, so I'd just like to check that he was okay.
I thought, well, it's wet, so he must really be ill because he's going to ruin his suit anyway.
Our actress Ruth takes Peter's place. She's not a drunk, but she's also not a city gent. How long before she gets help? Four minutes have passed, and 34 people have passed.
People don't really want to know. They just haven't got the time. Well, they have got the time, they just don't want to get involved.
But it's more complicated than that. If the street were deserted, a passerby would probably go to the rescue. But these strangers have silently formed a temporary group with a rule: don't help. This woman, for instance, has clearly spotted Ruth, but she conforms to the rule and does nothing.
You all right? You all right?
Watch what happens, though, when someone else helps.
You all right? You sure?
She suddenly finds herself in a different group with a new rule: to help.
She don't look well, does she?
You all right, yeah? You sure?
First I thought she was dead. Then I sort of checked to see if she was breathing or not. And I looked around and I couldn't believe that no one had noticed her, because there was a bloke sat there just absorbed in reading a newspaper.
Peter's now having the same problem. This time, we've swapped his suit for casual clothes. He's not drunk, and we've asked him to act like he's in pain.
Help! Help! Help me! Please, somebody! Help me! Help me, somebody! Please help me! Help me! Help me! Help me! Please, somebody help me! Please, somebody help me!
I got into the tube and sat opposite a guy who threatened me. He'd obviously been sleeping rough and had problems, but he was quite verbally abusive.
Yeah, I was with a group of mates one day. We've seen two fellas arguing. We've literally turned the corner, discussed a few things, came back, and that was it. They were fighting.
I'd got up to walk away from him. He'd followed me, and he sat beside me for 6 or 7 stops, actually threatened to stab me.
We've had a little discussion between each other if we should stop it or not. We decided not to, so we was on our way.
And I was looking at the other passengers and looking at the guard on the carriage, hoping that somebody would help me.
We should have really done something, because at the end of the day, how'd we like it if it was us?
Nobody did anything on the tube. People just ignored me completely. When the guy eventually got off, then people came up and asked if I was okay, but during the journey they'd done nothing.
And that's when the guilt tripped in. We really did realise that it was wrong what we did. How'd you do it? How'd you feel when someone's beating 10 times out of someone? I mean, it could have been me, you, anyone, but deep down we bottled it.
It's always very distressing to watch situations like this where people are obviously suffering and no one's actually helping them. But what we have here is two conflicting rules. One is the rule that we ought to help, and the other is the rule that we ought to do what everybody else is doing. And here you have effectively a group of strangers who are exerting the pressure not to intervene, not to help, and it's very difficult to rebel.
So we have a lot of stuff going on in our head in a situation like that. The psychologists are kind of telling you what to think about the situation. There's an authority figure on screen in a secret control room with lots of cameras in it, and it says PhD after her name. But what have we just learned about that is passed down? We know that our ancestors are passing down these scripts. So we know that seeing someone hurt who could be a member of our tribe tends to generate a lot of focus. So we'll kind of look at it, even if out of the corner of our eye. And the authority in this situation is carried by the group. They form the silent agreement not to help. So we have authority and tribe together. And the emotion, the feeling bad to help, is completely overridden by the previous three. So the emotion to help the person is there, but there's also the emotion of fear. if I help this person, I'm deviating from the rest of this group. It's a big deal, a very big deal. And of course, there's some behavioral metrics of certain people that would go the other way. And that's a whole nother training. But in reality, this behavior of going along with authority, and I want you to see the group. These are total strangers that don't know each other that are now possessing authority. And just think back in your mind really quickly of that. There's a woman who wanted to help, but she was looking around for someone else. Somebody else, please step up. And who was the person that stepped up? It was a guy in a uniform. So someone wearing a uniform did that. So I want you just to imagine a homeless person waddles over there to help. And what would that woman's reaction be? Probably different. So there's a whole lot that our brain is scanning for on a very regular basis. When we'll get into, there's 5 tripwires that our brain has to become absolutely obedient to a situation like this or to another human being, like in the Milgram experiment. And those 5 tripwires are what our brain is searching for, but it's through the lens of the fate model: focus, authority, tribe, and emotion. So those are all little scanning devices that our brain is looking for. What do I need to focus on? Where's the authority figure in the room? What's everyone else doing? And is there anything here that is going to make me feel really badass, or is there something here that's going to make me feel horrible? And that's the 4 filters that we're really using all the time is through the fate model. I'm going to play one more video, and what I'd like you to do, and this is, we'll be wrapping up after this next video, but what I'd like you to do is look at those models. We had the 4 ways of seeing people. We had the 4 laws of human behavior. We had a ton of little models there, mainly the fate model. But I'd like you to look at the videos that you saw today and just think about and just process the information. How did this work? How did this hack into a human being? If I can make someone not help someone who's dying, if I can make someone murder another person, could I use those same techniques to talk to somebody with an eating disorder or depression or social anxiety and help them and cure them? If I can trigger extreme obedience in the brain, it doesn't have to be negative. It took me 15 years to realize that. I spent most of my life not using these things not to help people. So in reality, I want you to seriously have not just an understanding where you can explain this to another person. I want you to start seeing the world this way. I want to change the way you view the world. I want to change your entire life from this. That's only going to happen if you just kind of spend just a few minutes. These are all on YouTube, by the way. You can just type in Heroic Imagination Project. And it's Dr. Philip Zimbardo was the narrator there. He's the guy who ran the Stanford prison experiment. If you're not familiar with that, look it up or don't. But process how the fate model worked here, how we as human beings can be hacked, and how the worst thing in the world is to believe that we have some vaccination and we're immune to this. This is called the firewall illusion. So I want you to imagine a guy. I just went to Best Buy today to pick up this little thing. This is how I can put the PowerPoint on top of the Zoom meeting. But while I was in there, I was looking at laptops. And if I went and got a new laptop, and I don't believe in computer viruses. So they offered me this McAfee virus thing or whatever. And I said, no, I don't believe in that stuff. That's all fake. I'm more vulnerable to anything that I think is non-existent, or to anything I think I'm immune to. I'm more vulnerable to it. So when we meet people who say, I would never do that, that's not me, those are other people. Those are the people that are more vulnerable and easier to hack into. the person who is aware of the bystander effect, is aware of the effects of authority, our brain does not have a firewall. There's nothing there. There's nothing protecting us or standing in between us and some weird crap that we could be doing in like 30 minutes from now. So one more video, and I'm going to come back after the video. We'll close out the day, but I want you to spend some time tonight. Please go through this fate model and try to not just understand it, but I want you to start seeing it. When you're stuffing broccoli into a bag at the grocery store and looking across the aisle at somebody getting some carrots, I want you to see it then at tiny, stupid moments so that it infiltrates everything else. And you start seeing the world as a profiler, as a person who understands the depths and even the darkness of what humans are. And as long as we do it without judgment, we can still be happy.
It's obvious that we don't intervene in many kind of emergency situations because there's too great a risk to our life or limb. But now, what happens when you're in a situation where if you don't act, there could be a risk to your life? Imagine you're in a room and a smoke alarm goes off, smoke is pouring out from under the door, and if you don't leave that room quickly, a fire could erupt and you could be suffocated or burned to death. It's obvious what you do. But now, again, what happens if you're in that same room and there are 10 other people and all of them do nothing? Do you take action when other people define the situation as do nothing rather than do something? When your life is at stake by following the herd.
Behaving differently from your group can make you an outcast. But what would you do if you knew your group was entirely wrong? Would you, for example, sit in a burning room just because everyone else does? This hotel conference suite has been prepared for a focus group discussion on internet shopping. But all is not as it seems. We've been busy. The place is rigged with 4 hidden cameras and 6 concealed microphones. And psychology professor Dominic Abrams is watching from our control room, which we've built in an adjoining suite.
Now it's just a question of sitting and waiting.
Right, so this is a questionnaire all about kind of shopping habits and everything here. So just move that off your chair. So you can
Our first participant is Mary Mizuno, a London student who thinks she's arrived early. What she doesn't know is that behind this door there's about to be a serious fire in the hotel kitchen. Or at least the illusion of one, created by a smoke machine and some sound effects. What will she do?
She's now noticed the smoke and is concerned. At this point, she decides to investigate to find out what's going on. She's immediately taken responsibility for figuring out what to do.
Mary does the sensible thing and evacuates quickly. She even leaves her bag and coat.
As I've never been in a fire situation before, I tried to remember the kind of things that you're supposed to do, so I left my stuff and just went out.
But Mary was on her own. This time, we've planted 7 actors who are all in on the experiment. We've said to them, when you see the smoke, do nothing. Our second participant is Lauren Heffernan, also a student. What will she do?
In this situation, she'll be following a script. The script is partly written in her mind. It's a script which is borrowed from things like sitting exams. Most situations like this have some element of expected or scripted behaviour.
But what will happen to her script when we make a slightly unusual situation very unusual? Nothing to start with, so we get her attention. Now, how long before she dashes out of the room?
She's checking increasingly to see what the other people are thinking. But who can she appeal to? The answer is nobody. She turns to the norm of the group: ignore the smoke. In a real fire, the people in this group would be in very serious danger by now.
I was looking for some sort of reaction from someone else, even just the slightest little thing, that they'd recognise that there was something, you know, going on here. For me to kind of react on that and then do something about it, I kind of needed prodding.
She's waiting for someone else to react. Why isn't anyone else reacting? She feels uncomfortable. She doesn't want to embarrass herself by taking the lead, taking action. But something is definitely wrong.
Lauren stayed in the room for 20 minutes after spotting the smoke, concerned but immobile. The fire brigade say that if this fire had been real, even if flames hadn't burnt through the door, she would have died of asphyxiation in this time. In the end, we had to ask her to leave.
What about here? Thanks.
I was surprised that I didn't do anything at all. I was just literally waiting. I just thought that someone else is surely going to say something soon. And because no one else did, I just didn't react at all.
We tried the experiment 10 times, and the same thing happened over and over again. If the person was on their own, they left quickly. If they were in a group of 3 or more, they stayed, rooted to the spot. The average length of time they stayed, 13 minutes. In real fires, people die because of behaviour like this. In 1979, a blaze at Woolworths in Manchester killed 10 people.
The fire occurred during the day, when the store was occupied by hundreds of people. Most of those people managed to get out quite safely. The people that died in the fire were actually using the restaurant at the time.
But why so many fatalities in the restaurant? Investigators eventually realised that people simply hadn't evacuated. They'd waited to pay their bills. That was their routine.
We go into a restaurant. We sit down, the waiter comes over, we choose a meal, we eat the meal, we pay for the meal, and then we leave the building. That's our script, if you like, for eating a meal.
Worse still, everyone was following the same script, and no one wanted to be the only one to stray.
One of the main reasons why people died in the Woolworths fire is because they didn't want to be the first to react. They didn't want to stand out for the crowd and went along with the crowd behaviour.
Only one person in our experiment didn't go along with the crowd behaviour, artist James McKechnie.
What's that coming up from under the table? Is it fire?
Don't know.
Is it fire?
We should just wait till she comes back.
Yeah.
You think?
Yeah. She said just to wait here, didn't she?
What? The star? What is that?
I don't know. She said just to wait here, didn't she?
What? The star?
She's coming right down now.
James isn't going to sit in a dangerous room just because everyone else does.
Yeah.
Or is he? The power of the group proves irresistible.
The reassurances of the rest of the group that somebody else is responsible seem to be sufficient to pull him back into place. Instead of leaving the room and calling for help, he sits back down again and waits. Now everybody's looking at the smoke, but in some ways that gives the group even more influence. After all, if everybody can see the smoke and no one's panicking, well, it would be crazy for him to do it too.
James stays in the room for another 10 minutes before finally leaving. In a real fire, he wouldn't have been able to leave. He'd have been unconscious and close to suffocation.
That's pretty powerful. And he was kind of the hero of the group. We were all watching him put his hand on the door to leave and saying, yeah, that's me. Right? I know I was. I still do. I play that at a lot of trainings. And I think that understanding this can be a real superpower, because not just being, I can see scripts in other people, and I understand that everyone's running a script, but I also know that I am running scripts, and I can identify mine. Like, I know that I responded like an asshole to somebody at work, or I did something, but that was right after they said, something about X, Y, and Z that triggered as some script for me or triggered something. So identifying these scripts in our own life and just moment to moment and just watching this video might have saved your life, might have done who knows what. But once we're aware of these things in other people, we can influence them. But once we're aware of it in ourselves, then we gain a whole lot more control than we might realize over our personal behavior. So the homework that I would leave you with is to go through those, look at the fate model, but also, where am I running scripts when I should be paying attention? Where am I going with the crowd? And think about this. Like, the reason I offer a 300% money back guarantee when I do trial consulting is because I know scripts. If I could chalk it down to one thing, it would be scripts. If I could swing 8 jurors and just one of them is persuasive or charismatic, I've won the trial. Not based on the law, not based on the legal system, not based on the facts, not based on evidence, not based on anyone's testimony, just those 8 people. Then you can win. If it's enough to make you kill someone else, but even more so to make you literally kill yourself in a smoke-filled room, then it's enough for you to click a box on a note card in a courtroom. So I want you to just to understand the raw power of these scripts and how they govern our lives, to the point where we'll kill ourselves or others. And we're worried about, like, how can I persuade someone to buy a product? How can I persuade someone to think differently? If we think in terms of scripts, then we're thinking in terms of the most powerful thing in human behavior. And a lot of our scripts that are leverageable, I'm not sure if that's a word, are rooted in the fate model with focus, authority, tribe, and emotion. And if I leverage those, then I'm leveraging the most powerful thing in the world. So if I gave you that script, so if I offered you, let me get blank note cards because I have some trial consulting notes on these other ones. So if I offered you 2 note cards, and one has the secret formula to get a free coffee at Starbucks or to sell a product to a person, and the other one has, here's the formula to trigger any script you like in a human being from the fate model, my hope is by the end of today that you would choose the second, that the tactics are different from the ability to trigger a script. With that, we'll wrap up the day. So thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. Thanks very much.